Okay. Let me see. That's it? Is this? No, that's too dark, right? Let's try this one. That's fine. Okay, so welcome to Applied Math in Business 250. And so there's a PDF that's up on Laulima, and there will be other PDFs like it for every class. So please bring the PDF to class, whether it's in electronic form or paper printout form. Okay, so we'll kind of just go through some of that. So there's also the syllabus on Laulima. Maybe we'll go through a few more things about it next time. Part of this class is to use the Texas Instruments Business Analyst Calculator. The reason is that this calculator has some time value of money functions, and so these have to do with interest rates and borrowing. And there's a business core class called Business 14 Business Finance, and there's a move to try to get everyone to use that same calculator. Also, there is a certification exam or series of certification exams called the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. And so if any of you are interested in that, maybe it would be most appealing to finance majors. But that exam has 3 parts, and all of them are written assuming that you know this calculator. It's just because there's time value of money, borrowing, and these types of issues appear frequently in finance. And so that calculator is required on that exam, and so we want to try to encourage everyone to use it and maybe start to help each other with that one. So we'll be using that in this class. The assignments will be all on the publisher's website, McGraw-Hill MH Connect, and I think we got it set up so that you can link to it from the Laulima website. Sometimes other instructors may give you like this code, and you have to go and type in this code and make sure you register for the right section. But I think we got it set up so that you can pass through. You may need to type in an alternate email address. You should try your hawaii.edu email address, but if that doesn't work, I think I've heard that if you try another one, then you can pass through. As far as a browser is concerned, if you actually look on the Laulima site before you log in, if you kind of read some of their notes, they actually recommend what's called the Firefox Extended Support Release ESR. And so we should use the earlier one of those and not the more recent one of those. There are some of the questions in McGraw-Hill do not render properly in other browsers, and so you should be sure to use the Firefox, at least Firefox, and then the ESR. And so there's some questions where there's like a series of blue circles, and then the blue circles should disappear. If they don't, then you need to make sure that you're using one of the Firefox ESR browsers. And we'll be doing a little bit of Excel throughout the course. Okay, so I think many students probably are asking, how do you do well in this class? And I think the basic advice is to treat this as a college course, not as a high school course. And so what do I mean by that? And so if you think, what is the purpose of high school? I think the purpose of high school is to train people to learn to survive in the real world, maybe get a steady job. However, the purpose of college is really to learn to thrive in the real world, like get a good job or maybe even the beginning of a career. Okay, and what do you do in high school? In order to survive in the real world, you have to have basic competence in several areas. And so you take these classes, and the classes are pretty much at a very basic level. Okay. In college, on the other hand, you do have some general requirements, but really the new twist is that you have some kind of a major field. And when you pick a major field, there's a progression of courses, right? And not only do the courses, get harder, but they use knowledge or assume that you know knowledge from sort of the lower level courses. So for example, if you take a 300 level course, that assumes that you are familiar with most or if not all of the 200 level material. By the time you take a 400 level course, that assumes that you know the 100 or familiar with most of the material at sort of a 100 to 300 level. If you go to graduate school, you might take 500 level or 600 level courses in a master's level program, and so then they assume that you know all of the sort of lower level undergraduate stuff, material. I think that in high school, you can get away with this cycle of sort of learning and then taking a test, in one of the subject areas to sort of demonstrate competence. And again, that's because you want to demonstrate basic competence so that you can survive. And then, once you survive that exam, then other classes that you take don't really rely on that material. So it's safe to just kind of dump it and make space in your brain for other courses that you need to be taking. That's really not a good idea in college. Okay, and as again, I mentioned that there's this concept of a major and where there's a progression of courses. And really, you should think about learning, and then after some sort of assessment, you really want to retain and build on that knowledge so that in future courses you can learn more, and then of course have some sort of assessment, and then build on that. And so this course is designed, hopefully, to prepare you for not only the Business 314 class, Business Finance, but this other business core class called Business 310, or Business Statistics. And so if you think about statistics, there is another related branch of math called probability. And so the more you understand about probability, the better you'll do in statistics. And so that's basically what we'll be doing mostly in this course. Some time value of money, and we'll do time value of money throughout the course. And so we'll start off with some easier time value of money concepts, and then on every quiz throughout the summer session, there will be more time value of money stuff. So I think that it's kind of like maybe trying to learn a bicycle, ride a bicycle, or have some other skill. In the beginning, you fall down and you get scraped up a little bit, and then you might get frustrated, but then somewhere along the way, as you just practice at it, something clicks, and then you can just have so much fun riding it and the bicycle, and then time value of money problems can be fun for you, especially in Business 314. So we'll be doing that throughout the term, and then we'll be doing quite a bit on probability, which is actually the foundation for risk. And so, one of the key ideas or concepts or underlying concepts in business is the idea of risk, uncertainty. No one really knows what the future is. You can think, you can plan, but every now and then, Murphy's Law, if something is going to go wrong, if there's some likelihood, some probability that something will go wrong, it will go wrong. And then what do you do? How do you handle that? And so probability is a foundation for thinking about risk. So those are actually very important concepts in business. So what we do in this course should be very, very useful, certainly in the courses, the two business core courses that are coming at the 300 level, but hopefully even beyond that as well. Okay. Another way of thinking of college is it's sort of this bridge state between finishing high school and truly entering the workforce at a sort of a career level kind of a job. Some of you may have some entry level types of jobs, or maybe some internships that are also bridging to sort of good jobs or kind of career types of jobs. But college is this sort of cocoon stage where you're kind of transitioning, or this big word, metamorphosizing, or really changing into a career type of a person. And change any type of change is not easy, and so there's sometimes some struggle that's involved, and that's generally a part of learning. There's this other concept in learning called Bloom's taxonomy, and you can see sort of there's this model of it, diagram of it as this triangle, and the idea is that there's actually a progression. Sort of the base of the triangle, the bottom is knowledge, sort of knowing things, knowing facts, terms, concepts. When someone asks a question, you kind of regurgitate the answer. Those are kind of knowledge type of learning. So one up from that, there's a type of learning called comprehension, which is a little bit deeper, where you not only know the facts, but you can understand, interpret. Maybe you've written some papers that ask you to compare and contrast, right? And so that really helps you to begin to analyze things and topics and ideas, and make sure that you know what's different, pluses and minuses between different whatevers, plans or paintings or periods of history or countries or businesses or whatever. The next one up would be application, where you can actually apply this knowledge to new situations. So not only sort of regurgitating things, but really beginning to solve problems. And that's, I think, what employers are, one of the skills that employers are looking for when they hire college graduates. You might see some of these job postings, college graduate preferred. And so that doesn't only mean a person who's graduated from college, but hopefully by the time you've graduated from college, you've picked up very certain skills in problem solving. And that's one of the reasons why, before you really get started in 300 level classes in the business school, the faculty, the curriculum wants to make sure that you have some type of applied math and business training to make sure that you are familiar with this level of problem solving, because of the progression. The faculty, by the time you graduate, want you to be able to handle very, very complex problems and get a good salary so that employers will value the knowledge and the contributions that you can make. And so part of that is solving problems. One step up from that is analysis. So being able to identify structure, pull meaning from parts and relationships, and really starting to organize by principles. One up from that would be evaluation, judging the quality of something based on its adequacy, value, or logic or use. And then kind of at the top is synthesis, putting it all together, creating something, integrating ideas into a solution, proposing an action plan, formulating a new classification scheme or something new. In the business school, sometimes you hear this concept about entrepreneurship, which is really starting a new business, which is actually really, really hard to do. Very exciting if you can get it to all come together and happen. But in a certain sense, that's recognizing that there's a gap in the market. There's assembling a team of individuals together who can help you or work together in the right complementary way to get a new organization going, to start providing a new good or a new service to the marketplace. And so in a certain sense, it's entrepreneurship might be at the top of this Bloom's taxonomy. If you take a look at this, do you notice anything about it, maybe? At least this color version, there's sort of a darker level version of it. Sort of, these are called the lower level, right? And these are called the higher level. And so Bloom's taxonomy is known to have these 6 topics, and the lower 3 are the foundational ones, and then the upper ones are considered the higher level ones. I think if you look at it a little bit, maybe, and try to think about what we just talked about, you might say that, maybe this is like the high school level, and maybe this is like the college level. Okay.
But also indicate that more people would get the knowledge
Yes, the base shows that there may be more people who are able to regurgitate simple knowledge back at you, and much fewer people who are able to actually do everything at the synthesis level, and perhaps, continuing the analogy, be the entrepreneur type of a person, right? So it could be fewer people up at this level and more people down at this level. And so also, if you think of the job market, and yourselves, right? So, or the job market, there may be more people who can, bring these skills to the table, right? And so, since there's more of them, right, the wage that they can get may be a little bit lower. The people who can do these higher order things, there are fewer of them, and those who have those skills are much more valuable, and so they might get a higher salary, right? And so you might think about, where would I like to be, right? I know I want to earn more money, right? So part of that is related to the skills that you pick up in college, right? And some of those are problem-solving skills. You may think that as you look at some of the homework assignments, like, wow, this is, it's just a textbook problem, but I really want to throw out the idea that the textbook problems are actually much, much, much simpler than any real-world problems that you encounter. And so why not, use this time to exercise your brain, develop the skill of problem solving, and I believe that that would really, really serve you well. Okay. Any other comments? Comments are always welcome. Okay. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we do have a homework system called MH Connect. The system will actually help you, and guide you to answers. What I think the sort of high school approach to doing the homework on the MH Connect would be to basically use it to get some homework points. Just, oh, I don't know, let's click. Oh, okay, and type in something, guess, and if that's not right, guess. Okay, got it. Move on, and then you're sort of in that maybe quasi-learn, not even test, but just get points mode. That's the worst, by the way. And so, there's lots of articles about how struggling and being confused, and particularly after you're confused, sort of getting unconfused, that's a big part of learning. And so here's one article. Don't read it now, but here's one article on how struggling can help you get better and help you learn. I also encourage you to spend time with this material if you can. Work in groups. However, each student should submit their own work. Part of the advantage of working in groups is that you get to try to explain complex material to other people. Before you get a job, typically you have an interview, and that's where you actually have to talk to people, and it may be somewhat interactive. And in some places, the interviews will actually involve some questions or challenges or puzzles. And I think that working in groups is actually a good way to get practice, talking to people, having some type of an interaction, and working together to solve complex problems. So I really do encourage that. Finally, I want to introduce you to this concept called the growth mindset. And so the contrast would be the fixed mindset. So the growth mindset is the good one. The fixed mindset is the one that you don't want to have. And so here's one article of many on this topic. And one paragraph from that article says that the research has shown that what makes students succeed is quite different from their cognitive abilities or the quality of the instructions they receive. I actually should cross out the instructional part. No, I'm just kidding. So it doesn't matter about your ability or the quality of your teacher, really. Their success, in fact, depends on their belief about their own intelligence and their own abilities. So in other words, their success depends on their own mindset. And so a growth mindset is a mindset that says that the more time that you spend with something, the better at it that you'll get. Okay, and so I encourage you, some of the problems that you may find in this course, hopefully, are a little bit challenging. Not too easy, but challenging, sort of just the right level where you can be a little bit confused and struggle and learn through that and grow from that experience. And so I really encourage you to, not say, oh, I don't know, and then just, well, I wonder what the end, and guess at the homework system. Okay, it's there, 24 hours. I know people have different schedules, and so it's available to provide some quick feedback to show you whether you're not on the right track or not, so you can really learn some of the problem-solving techniques from this class. Okay. So, how to do well, struggle with the homework, maybe don't ask for help right away. Give yourself 10 minutes. If you are really adventurous, give yourself 15 minutes. Just say, I'm not going to ask for help for 10 minutes, and then just give yourself 10 minutes and just do everything. Throw yourself at the problem and try to sort it through. Try to organize things in your mind. Okay. Think about what we learned in class. I think sometimes when I look at some Excel homeworks from previous sections, I give an assignment, and most people like Google for something word related to the assignment, and then they submit a template based on something they found on the internet. And I scratch my head and I say, well, I guess I spent all this time preparing lecture, trying to find ways, help students organize ways, and it's not, they're not using it. So supposedly what we lecture about in class is related to the assignments at hand, and so think about what we learned in the lecture and make that connection. Okay, you have to make that connection. Let's see, don't use the system to just get points and move on without learning the material. Struggle with it, and that's how it sticks in your brain. In the McGraw-Hill homework system, many of the problems are algorithmic, and so what that means is that each time you hit it, it kind of gives you a different set of numbers. And so also, students will probably have different numbers, but the same structural problem. You'll face the same structural problem. One of the advantage of that is that after it's due, you can actually go back to the material. And so as I mentioned, earlier, we have weekly quizzes on the first day, first business day of the week. I don't think we have any Monday holidays. I think all of our quizzes are actually on Monday. But if Mondays happens to be holiday, it'll be on Tuesday. The way that you can prepare for the quiz is to go back to the homework. Okay, and again, many of the homework problems are algorithmic, and so it'll get a fresh set of numbers, and so you can go back and you can get a lot of practice that way to help you make sure that you understand the material and also to prepare for the quizzes. Math skills are just like the skills at any sport. So, not to pick any particular sport, but basketball, I think most people are familiar with it. And, when a coach has practice, does the coach make the players do routine drills over and over? Does the coach just say, okay, I see you got that. Yeah, I see you can do a layup. You're good. Let's go do something else. And no, right? Usually the coach makes the players do the same skill over and over and over again. Why? So that it becomes automatic, right? So that's actually the way that our brains work. The more you practice something, the more you rehearse something, the more you go over and over, the sort of the neural pathways in your brain builds that pattern. And so, the homework is not timed, but the quizzes are timed. And so sometimes the time pressure means that you have to be able to do the problems quickly. So it's not enough that, oh yeah, I know how to do that, and you do this, this and that, oh yeah. You have to be able to do them quickly and efficiently, right? And so the only way to do that is to practice them. And so again, you can go back to previous homework assignments and review and redo some of those basic problems so that you can get faster at them. and more efficient. Okay, so part of being in college is also about being more independent, deciding what you'll do with your own time. And so I encourage you to use some of that time to practice. Okay, so here we are in a business school, and so you might wonder, what is the essence of management? What should you learn in business school? And so this is from basically an Accounting 202 Intro to Managerial Accounting textbook. Some of the topics that they learn is planning, and then after that it's directing, after that it's controlling, and then after that it's improving, and then you kind of want to do better, be more efficient, do new markets, do new things. But there's this one space in the middle, which is really what you need, the skill that you need to learn in business school, or what you need to do in business school. Does anyone want to take a guess to what it is? It's a phrase. What does planning, directing, controlling, and improving, what do they all have in common? And what do managers do? Sorry? Part of it. Leading is very interesting. Sometimes leadership is more, shall we say, strategic, and management is more tactical, sort of more operational. And so there's obviously a relationship. I think that management is more of a focus on operations. Leadership, I think, is sort of a higher level, developing strategies, coordinating, setting the vision for the organization. It's interesting sometimes if you look at the bios of some of these CEOs, a lot of them have like English or humanities as a background, and sometimes I wonder, I wonder what it is about that. And I'm sure there are many factors, but one concept that I think is that part of English, say, is writing novels. Where you just have the story, and a good novel has characters who are real, and you understand how people interact together, and how teams would work. These teams would work together, or gosh, if we get these people together, they've got all these things covered, but there's one weakness that they have, and so maybe I can supply that, or we need to find the right person to bring that in to complement that team. And so I think part of being a good novelist, or part of English, is understanding the people dynamics. But also I think that novelists, in a certain sense, have a vision. They have the story in their mind, and they sort of unfold it in an entertaining way, and that in a certain sense, I think that's a vision. And I think that the CEOs, instead of writing fiction and making things happen in the future, they actually have a novel, except it's in real life, where they're directing their team, they're communicating instructions and values and visions to their team. And then instead of paper, ink, or electronic bits on a web page or whatever, pen and paper, happening in fiction, it happens in real life. So I think that's sort of one of the relationships between humanities and being an executive leader in an organization. But that's definitely a part of business. But at a more sort of tactical, operational manager level, typically, in your career, you start out as a manager, entry level, and you might get promoted to, be a supervisor, and then maybe a manager. And then as a manager, that's where you interact more with executives, and then you sort of get mentored in that way of thinking, and then you can make it to the leadership level. But to get started, even leaders still need to do the basic tasks. What these topics all have in common is that in order to do them or do them well, you need to engage in decision making. Thank you. DECI. Decision. Oops, my computer is slow. Decision making. Okay, so really, a big part of management is about decision making, right? And so if we just sort of flip back to our Bloom's taxonomy, you know, where do you think decision making is? Sorry? Judging, right? Evaluating something based on the quality, right? So decision making is either at this level or at this level, right? It's pretty high up there on Bloom's taxonomy, okay? And so that's where you want to be, okay? That's where you want to get out, okay? In the business school. And then from there, obviously, from the manager level, if you can do really well at that, you can do the leadership level. Okay, so it's enough talking for the moment. Let's see if we can do some math, a little bit of math, and learn something about a business. See, you know, just doing a little bit of analysis, see if we can learn something about a business. And this material is actually considered, if you Google cost, volume, profit, basically CVP, you'll find some other examples or more information about this material. Okay, so you know, think about, say, Sally's Silkscreen Shirts Incorporated, which sells screened T-shirts for $15. Okay, so it's a little bit of little business, right? So Sally's can buy solid T-shirts for $3 each, and to produce a shirt, Sally's pays $2 per shirt for the combined cost of labor and ink. Sally's pays rent of $125 per month and pays $75 per month to lease equipment that they use in the business. It should say what is Sally's break-even point. Sorry? How do you know?
So it would be $5 to put the shirt on. Then take that $5 out of the
Sorry, wait, how much to make the shirt?
$5.
Five. Okay, $5 to make the shirt.
Then you take that out of the profit that she's making from the shirt.
Okay.
And you gotta add the rent and the cost of running the operation with the equipment, and that's $200. So our 10 times 20 is 200.
Okay. So you're making a profit of basically $15 per shirt, right?
Right.
And then need to add costs. And so that's 75 plus 125. So that's equal to 200. Okay. So, from profit. Okay, that's right. So then if you subtract the 5, this gives you 10. Is that right? And so you put this together to get 20 shirts. Is that right? Does that make sense? So there's actually that's correct, by the way. It's good. But there's a more structured way to think about this problem. Okay? There's a more structured way to think about this problem. So what's the structured way to think about this problem? What's a structured way to think about this problem? Think of what? cost per month. Okay, so close. So what we want to do is you noticed, right, that the $3 from materials plus the $2 for basically labor equals $5. Okay, so combine these. Okay. Then the next thing that you noticed was there was this other. So you see, the materials, right? That's a cost for $3 each, right? And the combined shirt of labor and ink for $2, right? That's a cost. And so there are these other ones, right? The 75 lease for equipment, you know, and this other one, sorry, 125. No, sorry. So this is the 75 lease for equipment, and the 125 rent. 125 rent. $125 rent. Okay. And so you combine these. Okay. So the question is, why do you combine those? Why do you combine materials and labor together to get 5? And why do you combine lease and rent together to get 200? Why don't you add the 125 rent? Why don't you add the 125 rent and labor together to get 127? But this is the right way to do it, by the way. But why? They're going to different places?
You're paying the version of fees per month, but the other two are the fees per shirt.
Aha, very good. So these are per shirt. Okay, very good. Okay, these are per shirt, and this is sort of for the entire month. Okay, so yeah, that's the key. Okay, so there are other costs like this that are more related to the shirt. And obviously, you know, it's just, we just talked about rent and lease, but there's insurance, policy premiums, you know, other kinds of costs, right, that are like this, okay? And so these are just examples of a larger category of costs, right? So there's one type of cost here, and this is an example of another category. So we're looking, although we have these, among these 4 costs here, right, these 2 are in one category, and these 2 are in another category. Okay, very, very, very important categories. Anybody want to guess what those are called? Right. Which one is variable and which one is fixed? Okay. These are called variable costs, and these are costs. Okay, variable costs and fixed costs. How do you know which is a variable cost and which is a fixed cost? Okay.
The fixed cost, so you have to cover rent in order to have fixed. So that's automatically, so you have to pay that. Then the cost of materials and labor, that depends on how many shirts you sell.
Okay, that's it. So it depends on what we call quantity, right? So here, or you know, output. Depends on quantity, depends on output. Or you know, why is this called, you know, volume, right? So obviously this type of analysis deals with costs, right? We're looking at costs. These are all costs here, right? And they're related. So some of the costs are related to your business volume. Some are related to your business output, right? So if you sell more shirts, right, you're going to have to buy more materials. You're going to have to use more labor to finish them, to put them together in order to have something to sell. Does that make sense? Right? And so the costs that vary with output, right, depends on how many you sell, right? Those are called variable costs. And on the other hand, what happens if you don't sell any shirts? Do you have to pay rent? Yes, you still have to pay rent. You have an obligation to do that, rent. What about equipment? Well, you signed a lease to lease the equipment probably for a year or 2 years, maybe even to get a good deal, you might have signed it for 3 years or 5 years, right? So per month, to get a good deal per month, you might have signed this long-term lease. And so whether you make a shirt, whether you use equipment or not, you signed that and you have an obligation to pay it, right? So even if you sell zero, right, you still have to make those payments. The payments that behave that way are your fixed costs. Okay, so even if quantity equals zero, okay, even if the quantity equals zero, you have to pay it. So that's how you identify a fixed cost. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, good. So so one of the ways that we bring a little more structure to this problem is to think about ways to visualize or model what's going on. Okay, and so if you remember from economics, when you have these graphs in economics, what were you graphing on the axes? Price and quantity, right? So from economics, this would be price, and of course price is in dollars, and on this horizontal x-axis we would have quantity, right? So how could we draw the costs? So in economics you only have price, okay? So in CVP analysis, CVP diagram, this is what we're actually doing is we're doing what's called a CVP diagram, cost volume profit diagram. We don't put price, we put dollars. Okay, so it's almost like economics, where instead of price we put dollars, sort of generalized dollars, and then we also put quantity on the x-axis. Okay, so how could we draw our costs on this diagram? So the starting point for costs would be how much would the company's costs be if it produced no items? If Q were equal to 0, what would its cost be? 200, right? And so we'll call this the fixed costs. Does that make sense? So what happens if it sold one shirt? What would its cost be? It would still have to pay its fixed costs, right? And then it sold one shirt, so how much cost would it have? It will have 205, right? Because if it sold one shirt, right, it had to at least pay $3 for the materials and $2 for the labor. Does that make sense? So we would have 205. What happens if we sold 2 shirts? It would be 200, not 20, but 210, right? 210. Does that make sense? Right? Yeah? So basically, you can see that it would actually be with this line, right? The total cost. Right? Total cost line. And the sort of equation, and we'll think, what's the equation of a line? Y equals, okay, so we want to draw a line. Okay, sorry, this is a line, right? Because if there's 0 shirts sold, it has to pay, fixed cost 200. In this case, 200, but it would pay whatever its fixed costs are. And then as it's sold, other shirts, it would get, for every additional 1 more shirt sold, it would bump up by the same amount, right? So it will bump up by the same amount, right? Increase by that amount, right? So we get a line. So we want to write this out as a line, okay? So our y-axis is actually Q for quantity. And what's our intercept? 200. Right, because so we're going to do something times Q, right? Q, quantity, right? So something times Q plus B. So our intercept, so when Q is 0, when this variable is 0, maybe I should say total cost. Let's do that. So when Q is 0, when we sell no units, Q is 0, this, whatever M is, even though we don't know what it is, if we have Q is 0, that's going to wipe it out. So the total cost will be 200. Okay, so we got that sort of anchored down. And how much is it going to increase by? Like if we sold 1 shirt, we're going to add, 205, right? So so let's see, total costs. If we have Q and we have total costs, if we have 0, it's 200. If we have 1, it's 205. If we have 2, it's 210. So if we have X, if our cost is X, what do we have? We have 200 plus something times X. Does anyone know how much it is? 5. So this would be 5. Right? So the 200 is our, what do we call this cost? This is our fixed cost. And the 5 is our what? Variable cost. So what I kind of try to do is I kind of try to make the variable cost lowercase because it kind of varies with the amount produced, and I try to make the fixed cost abbreviate with capital letters because it's kind of like solid and sort of fixed. So this is actually the equation of our total cost line. Does that make sense? Yeah? So kind of interesting, I think, right? Even just a little bit of thinking, a little bit of scratching our heads, we can sort of model costs this way. So there is another number that we haven't used from this problem, another very important number that we haven't used from this problem. Of course, we've used a lot of numbers from this problem, like we've used the 75, we've used the 125 as fixed cost, right? We've used the 2 and we use a 3 as variable costs. But there's another really important number that we haven't used yet, and that's the price, which is $15 per shirt. So how could we use the price? How could we put the price on this diagram? I think it was $15, right? $15. Using the price. How could we put the price on this diagram? Right? So how could we use that? So we have one line, right, that shows us the cost, right, total cost. What's the other side of costs, right, in a business? Profit. What's profit? Profit is equal to revenue. Revenue minus, we'll say expenses. Technically, we should say net income or loss. Net, what does net mean in accounting? Net means that there's been a subtraction. So there has been some type of a subtraction. Okay. So if you say net income, you've subtracted revenue minus expenses, right? And so anytime you have a subtraction, unfortunately, right, could be negative. And we don't say, negative income, or, you can think of negative income. What you do is you say loss. And so if, in the unfortunate case where expenses are larger than revenues, then you would have, you want it to be positive, and you call it net loss. And so in accounting, the minus sign is this tiny little dash, which is really, really small. And so if you have this huge spreadsheet or all these numbers, it's easy to overlook a little dash minus sign. And so in accounting, to make sure that people understand which numbers are negative, they often put them in parentheses, like this one is a minus, all the others are plus, and this one's minus. So sometimes you'll see negative numbers denoted by parentheses and not a little minus sign dash. Okay, so sometimes we say net income, and then in parentheses we say loss, and that means that if the number is negative, we call it net loss. Okay, so we kind of have a total cost line, total expenses line, and so maybe we can think about a total revenue line. Right, so what's the line for total revenue? We're not doing supply and demand in this class.
In the same slope.
We'll keep going with this. Keep thinking. So if you saw, so how would you make revenue line? How do you make a revenue line, right? So what's a line, right? Line is basically 2 points or a point and a slope. So if you can find 2 points or a point and a slope, then you got a line, right? So the easy line is where the easy point is to find the one where you don't sell anything, right? So if you have 0 sales, how much revenue do you have? 0. So that's 1 point on the revenue line. So if you sold 1 shirt, how much would you have? You have 15, right? And if you sold, so actually, as long as we have 2 points, we have a line. So it will look something like that. So total revenue. The total revenue line. Okay, and so we know, right, that the total revenue line has a form y equals mx plus b, What is B? What's the intercept for the revenue line? 0, right? Because it starts at the origin. Okay? And so, what's the slope? The slope is the price, right? 15 times Q. And so I'll just say B, or maybe I'll just say plus 0. So these would be the fixed costs, right? So there's sort of no, or B, intercept. Okay? And price is slope. Okay? So what can you say about this region over here? In this region, the costs have what relationship to the revenue? Right, the fixed costs start out, in this case, at 200, right? Okay, so if you have 0 sales, right? If you have 0 sales, you still have to make those fixed cost payments, the rent and the lease payments of 200 total. So if you have 0 revenue, you're going to have to make this payment of $200. So what's your overall business performance? You're out. It's a loss. So for this whole region, this whole triangle area, what would you say? Here's the total cost line, and the total costs are what? In relationship to the revenue. They are above the revenue, right? So in this region, how would you describe the business performance? Loss, right? Loss, actually. Just call this loss. Let's say loss. Okay? So loss, right? So costs exceed revenue. Costs are larger than revenue. Okay? So this is this sort of closed triangular region. Then, sorry, there's a little bit messy here, but sorry, there's this upper triangular region, right? The open upper triangular region, okay? And how would you describe this region? Profit, yeah, profit. Gain, profit. Profit, okay? And so, why? Because of the profit. The profit region, because revenue exceeds costs. Okay, and then there's this other point over here. And what would you call this point? The break-even point, because that's where your revenue exactly equals your profit. Okay, and then break-even. Revenue equals cost. Okay. Okay. So when businesses start out, right, their revenue is very, very small, right? But they have, salaries to pay, they have rent to pay, they've got all of these costs, and so when businesses start out, they typically start out as a loss. Okay. And then hopefully, after a while, word gets out, people like the product, and sales revenue starts to increase, and then you sort of cross the chasm, as they say, from the early period of operating at a loss to operating at a profit, and you have a sustainable, viable business. Okay. So anyway, that's how we get started in this class with some basic, simple thinking and some lines. What we can do is we can write down basically an equation for net income. So that is equal to revenue minus total cost. Right? So what's our equation for revenue? Basically, it's just the revenue. 15 times Q. Price times quantity, right? So let's say 15 times Q. And what we want to do is we want to subtract our total costs. So this is our total cost line. 5Q plus 200. So what we basically did was we did price times quantity, and then we're subtracting our variable cost times quantity plus fixed costs. Okay, so actually what we can do is we can say that we have 15Q minus 5Q minus 200. Right, or this 15 minus 5Q minus 200. Right, so we can actually move, say net income plus 200 is equal to 15 minus 5Q. And so we actually have Q is equal to net income plus 200 divided by 15 minus 5. Right, and so QBE, so at break even, net income is equal to 0. And so we have 200 over 10, which is equal to 20. Does that make sense? So if you think about it, what we're doing is we have net income plus fixed costs equal, I should move this over a little bit, move this over a tiny bit. So net income plus fixed costs equals P minus price minus variable cost times Q. So basically we're getting Q is equal to net income plus fixed costs over price minus this variable cost, and then QBE is equal to really fixed costs divided by P minus VC. So these are the numbers for this specific case, and this is the general case. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So when we kind of started this, I was asking, why do you combine the costs, right, the 2 and the 3 to get 5, and why do you combine those with the price, right, and then why do you treat the fixed costs, right, the 125 and the 75, why do you treat those separately? Why do you treat them differently, right? And so here, in a very more structured way, you can see that the fixed cost is like an intercept, like the y-intercept, like B, and the variable costs and the price are like slopes, right? The variable cost and the price are like slopes. So you combine all of these intercept, fixed cost kind of costs together, and you combine all of the variable costs, all of the ones that depend on the production level, depend on the output, you combine those together. And furthermore, you actually combine those with the price, because the price is also like a slope. Does that make sense? Okay, so with a little bit of analysis, we can actually come up with this kind of thinking. So here, so if the other page is kind of a mess, here it is. I think of this kind of as a tale of two lines, okay? But don't, tell anyone, oh, we learned about a tale of two lines, because they won't understand. Nobody else calls it that, I don't think, okay? But really, it's a story of the revenue line and the cost line, okay? And so again, we have the total fixed cost is this intercept. The variable cost is the slope, right? The price is the slope of the revenue line. Revenue line here in green, cost line in red, right, dashed red. And then here we have this loss region, profit region, and here we have the break-even quantity. And then to find the amount of sales and break-even, how would you find the amount of sales, break-even sales? You just take the break-even quantity and multiply it by the price. So you can find, so this is actually a point. So the x-intercept, or x coordinate would be the quantity, break-even quantity, and then the y-axis would be sales BE, but sales B is just the price times price times QBE. Okay, because why? Because you could say, well, because it's on the revenue line, and any point on the revenue line is the price times is P times Q, and so let's just do that. Okay, so net income or loss is net income is revenue minus costs. So here's our revenue line, price times quantity. Here's our cost line, variable. So here's M, our slope is the variable cost. There's a fixed cost, and that's what we have. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. So on the TI calculator, there actually is a function that, or a worksheet that allows you to quickly calculate the variable costs, the break-even point. So let me find my calculator here. Here it is, I think. So here's my calculator. And while it's loading, what we'll do is I'll show you how to go to the break-even worksheet, and to clear the worksheet. So we should say 200 because that's the fixed cost. We should say 5 because that's the variable cost. And then we should say 15 because that's the price. And then we'll actually have the calculator compute the break-even point for us. Okay, so my calculator is here it is. Okay, so what we do is sorry about that. Okay, here we go. What we want to do is there's a break-even right here above 6. Okay, so if you do second break-even, you go into the break-even worksheet. So what you should do is you should clear it actually. So we do second clear. So this clears the worksheet. And so you see that the display says FC. So what do you think FC is? Fixed cost, right? So you punch in 200 and then you put in enter. Okay, then this tells you that the next things you can do is either compute or enter or the up or down arrow. So we'll do the down arrow. So VC, that's the variable cost, and so in our case it was $5. So we do second enter. So now I put that into the worksheet. So we go down to the next variable in the worksheet. P is the price, and the price was 15, right? So we put that in and enter. So we put in 15 and enter. So now it looks like this, right? Then we do the next one. This is actually the profit or the net income, and so at break even, the profit is 0. So net income, right, it equals 0. So we go down to the next one, Q, and that's where we push compute. And so you'll notice that it gives you a star to let you know that's the one. So if you keep going down, you just cycle through. So there's a fixed cost and there's no star. So that tells you this is one that I entered. That's another one that I entered. This is another one that I entered. And here's the profit. And then here's the star. That's the one that I computed. So you can see that it's 20. So the calculator kind of helps you to do that quickly. If you wanted to do it in Excel, you could use a formula. You could just sort of punch in all the numbers. Generally, it's better practice to sort of show your variables and then maybe make the one that you compute bold, and then you just have some kind of a formula in there. The other twist for this is to look at this type of a problem. So we'll pick it up from here next time, okay? But basically, you might read this and think about what you can do or what you can't do. And it turns out that this one has variable cost plus fixed cost, or variable costs and fixed costs, right? And it also has a new type of, okay? So we'll pick it up from here next time. And there is a homework assignment that's due tomorrow, but let me tweak it a tiny bit. Okay, so there's you should do some homework in Connect tonight if you haven't already. And I think everyone saw the announcement that there is a computer lab right over in E101 to use. And then on Mondays, we will be meeting in E102. Okay, so we'll take the quiz in basically the computer classroom, and then we'll stay there and do some work in Excel in the computer lab. Okay, so this is the only Monday that we're here. So all the other Mondays we're over there, and then the very, very, very last day when we take the final, we're over there and E102 for the final. We'll take that over there. Okay? So other than that, see you tomorrow. Hi, yes. Oh,
I'm not going to be here on Friday.
you're not going to be here on... Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, just letting you know.
Okay,
Thank you.
if you want, there may be some recordings that are available on our website that you can look at, but we won't be here Friday. That's okay. Send me an email.
All right.
Okay, and then did you come in late, by the way?
No, I did not.
Someone-
Come on in.
Okay,
That's me.
you can, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
syllabus.
thanks. Sorry?
Can I get syllabus and David Templiarios? Rios?
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Syllabus is on La Lima.
okay, I just print it out or whatever?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You can go over to E101.
And print it out?
Yeah,
that
print it over
sounds
there.
good, whatever. So do we need like a calculator or whatever?
The department chair
Yeah.
wants everyone to use the TI
Yeah.
BA2 Plus, and so
I mean-
I am complying with the department
Oh,
chair.
the reason why I'm
There are
asking-
other professors who teach Business 214, and some of them don't require it.
I have
So
a business calculator, but I'm saying like the VA will pay for it. So if
Oh.
it's on the thing,
if it's on the syllabus, it says it's required.
okay, I can
Yep.
get one then.
Okay.
good.
I would
That's all I'm
recommend
asking,
it,
yeah. I
but
get what you're saying.
not everybody, not all the professors,
Yeah,
but I comply.
Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, okay.
I have jury duty tomorrow.
Okay.
So I don't know what time I have it
Yeah, yeah.
tomorrow. So I'm
And your name is
Des
Des.
Oki Takahashi.
Oh, okay. Okay. Right.
So if I do miss
That's
class
what I do.
tomorrow, I'll probably send you an email saying
Okay.
if I will miss class tomorrow. I have a form if you want to look at it.
You know what? You should upload it. Can you scan it and
I have
upload it?
with me.
Okay. Should I just take a photo of it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then did you walk in late? No. Somebody else walked in late. I don't know. Anyway.
Tomorrow's class. Where's tomorrow's class? Over here.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay. Okay. I should, oops. I know what I'll do. Let's see. We'll use this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, have you gone on to Connect yet?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So if you notice, let's see, where is it? There's a thing called lectures,
Mhm.
And so you can go there, and the lecture should be recorded.
Okay, sounds good.
It takes a little while for it to go up there, so you just go to lectures,
Mhm.
and then just wait a while. And then under here, it should appear,
Okay.
like in about 45 minutes or so. So
Okay.
after class, like after like 1,
Mhm.
the Tuesday session should be up.
Sounds good. And then homework is due when? Like before class?
Before class, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
okay.